So in the next bit of this video, let's talk about how we can choose ultimately a portfolio. So we're going to start with this idea of modern portfolio theory, where we can find what we refer to as efficient frontiers or efficient portfolios. We can find this set by mapping some points. The slide here obviously shows the process. Here's how we calculate the return. Here's the calculation of standard deviation for a 3-asset portfolio. But the most important part here is the solver piece. We're going to talk about a function in Excel that's called solver. And we'll make sure you have access to that here in a second. But in solver, you set up some constraints. We want to find the maximum return at a certain level of risk. And the other constraints are the weights have to be greater than 0, less than 1, and the sum of all the weights has to be equal to 1. Now, what we haven't introduced here is the idea of short sales. So we'll talk about that a little bit later, but for right now, this is our model. So we want to find that portfolio that's going to give me the maximum return at a certain level of risk. So here's how I did this for the 4 assets that I had talked about a little bit earlier. The first one is I solved for the minimum variance portfolio. It found the minimum rate of return that was possible using these 4 assets. So if I put 25% of my money in A, 13.3 in B, 45.1 in C, 16.6 in D, that's a whole 100% of investment, my portfolio standard deviation will be the least possible at 4.01%. Now the next thing I want to do, now that I know this minimum variance portfolio, the next thing I want to do is find other points on this efficient portfolio. I want to find the maximum return that I can get at various standard deviations. And of course, these standard deviations have to be greater than the portfolio standard deviation. So in this example, I plugged in what's the portfolio giving the maximum return at 4.75%. And in this case, I would end up with 0.50 as my portfolio return. Now the standard deviation's off a little bit. I'm not exactly sure why, but it gives me a point on this line. So let's kind of go through this. We need the solver. So let's see if we can do this real quick. I want to kind of show you. If you have your Excel open, and if you don't, stop the video right now, open Excel, take a second to do this. If you have Excel open, if you click on the data link, on the far right, you should see 2 things, data analysis and solver. And if you do not see those, then we need to get them. How do you get them? It's very simple. Go to File, and you want to scroll down to the bottom till you find, trying to get this all in vision for us, till you find, options. Go to options. When you go to options, you'll see that there is something here that says add-ins. Go to add-ins, and you want to click on, down here it says manage Excel add-ins. Click on go. You then choose what you want. I would choose 2 things. The analysis tool pack. Do not choose the VBA. We're not interested in the Euro currency tools. And the solver add-in. Just click on those, say OK, and now you might turn off Excel and open it up again, and then you'll find these 2 data points here. So that helps us at least see how you can get this function, this saver add-on. Here they give us an example of 3 assets and the portfolio. You put in weights. And then it just asks you, or you ask it to solve for different rates of returns, again, for the particular assets. So here's what the solver thing looks like, right? The solver box opens up. In this case, we want to find the minimum risk. When you do that, it's going to find the minimum risk. This is the portfolio that creates the minimum risk for this 3-asset portfolio, 4.399%. So that is your minimum variance portfolio. And the next, what you will do is you will change this to maximize, change this cell to the return, and then add the value you want. So in this case, I might put in find the maximum return, and under this add function, I would put in the cell for the standard deviation equals to 0.04399%. Then that would give you the portfolio that would create the highest rate of return at that particular level of risk. And if you do this over and over again, we would be plotting out the efficient frontier. Again, remember, there are no portfolios to the left. There's nothing out here. So you can't create a less risky portfolio with the assets that we have in this example. If you wanted 7.5% risk, this is the amount of risk I want. I cannot find a portfolio with these 3 assets that will give me a higher rate of return. So these are the highest returns you can get given the risk levels of the portfolios. So this is created, essentially what we have is the efficient frontier. Down here are all the assets that we can use to create portfolios, all the risky ones. And there is a boundary that we can create that will tell us what this ultimate efficient frontier is. Again, remember, the moral of the story is you want to choose that portfolio that has the highest rate of return for the risk that you want to take. So we need to know this line, which is all the highest returns, so we then can choose the portfolio when we understand our risk level. If we add international stocks, obviously that does things to us, right? We understand it. Correlation is going to create some diversification. That's going to move this curve outward. The efficient frontier now moves out. So this is just a combination of the 5 assets that we had earlier: bonds, the S&P 500, the Nikkei, the German exchange, and the Chinese exchange. This is the efficient frontier for that particular set of assets. So in this case, we're looking at which portfolio do you want comprised of these asset classes. So this is an allocation question. The next step then is to identify which one I actually want. So again, the efficient frontier has a lot of portfolios. Each has different risk. Which one I want is up to me. So this concept that we're talking about is something called utility. It's a measure of satisfaction. It's based on my risk tolerance. So a risk-averse investor may prioritize bonds over stocks because they're more sensitive to that higher risk level. So utility can be thought of as a benefit. You want to achieve the highest benefit possible given all the choices of things that you can buy. So on that efficient frontier that has all those things that we understand as being the highest returns, we want to find the one for you. So we have a formula here. the expected return minus 1/2 A. A is what we refer to as the measure of risk aversion times the variance. So A is a measure of your risk tolerance. So again, just kind of remind us again, risk aversion is a measure of an individual's personal level of risk tolerance. It's different for each person, but it also can be different for different investment strategies. For instance, you may be fairly risk tolerant for your retirement strategy because you have a long ways to go till you get to retirement. However, if you're saving to buy a new home in the next 5 years, you may be have very little risk tolerance. You want to make sure the money is there. This actual number is kind of difficult to assess and calculate. If that A is greater than 0, we say the person is risk averse. If it equals 0, they're risk neutral. If it's less than 0, we say that is gambling kind of activity. Most people are going to tend to be between 2 and 4. So in difference curves, identify all the portfolios that you can create that have the exact same utility. That is, they have the exact same benefits. So asset A here, or curve A, is for a riskier investor. That's this blue one right here with the dots, right? Now B, curve B, that's for a person that is less risk tolerant. So we want to move up here into directions in the northwest corner because that implies higher risk, which is where we get some of our benefit from. So how can we maximize this? If we combine the utility theory and the efficient frontier, we can identify what we refer to as the optimal portfolio. A cautious investor might choose a bond-heavy portfolio. An aggressive investor selects ones with more stocks. So this optimal portfolio is the highest in difference curve touched by the efficient frontier. So let's see how this might work. Here's the efficient frontier, this dark line right here. Blue, this green line here, indicates a low level of utility. As we move up, we're getting to higher and higher levels. Now let's think about this purple line out here. That's much higher utility, but the problem is it's on the wrong side of the efficient frontier. So as we move outward, we will eventually find one portfolio on this particular utility curve. That is the optimal portfolio for that person. For each person has their own set of curves. So person A is going to be down here. They both see the exact same efficient frontier, but the reason they invest in different assets is because of differences in risk tolerance. B will be out here. They will get a higher return, but they're also taking on higher risk. So again, this is really just a very general view about how people should choose portfolios or how we can go through the process of choosing portfolios. I hope you enjoyed it. I look forward to talking to you the next time. Bye-bye.